Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Yes, great. Welcome back, and welcome to this session 2 on the emergence of female leaders in the Global South. Very pleased to be leading this post-caffeine session. It's always the best session of the day, so I'm looking forward to some really excellent discussion. Following on from this morning's really excellent discussion, I'm sure, like many of you, you really enjoyed this morning's discussion and the information we received from the panelists. But you probably also noted, as I did, that it was largely focused on the private sector and to some degree leadership of women within the political sphere. And I think this is reflective of much of the discussion and especially the sort of popular discourse around leadership, which focuses very much on the global north and on leadership within business, within the private sector. And I think the civil society has until now largely got away, actually, with ignoring women's leadership. Especially in the sector in which I work, which is the anti-slavery sector, which we've increasingly realised is very much dominated by male leaders, despite the fact that the vast majority of victims of slavery are women. So around 70% of the people in slavery in the world are women and girls, and yet the vast majority of leaders are male. I and my colleagues at the Freedom Fund have increasingly recognised that this is a problem in the way that we address slavery. And we conducted a survey, in fact, of our own partners. So the Freedom Fund works in 5 countries around the world and supports 140 organisations working on the front lines with in the anti-slavery movement. And we conducted a survey of the organisations that we worked with and found that even in areas like Tamil Nadu, where the organisations we work with almost exclusively work on issues of women's exploitation in textile and spinning mills, less than a third of the organisations are led by women. And we see this as a problem, and so the Freedom Fund is developing a new program called Freedom Rising, which is a leadership and movement building program, which aims very specifically to support and connect frontline women leaders in the anti-slavery movement. And this panel today will be focusing on the issue of women's leadership in the slavery movement, I guess as a bit of a lens as to the issue of women's leadership more generally in civil society. And I'm hoping that we'll in particular look at what women's leadership in the anti-slavery movement can bring and what gaps exist at the moment as a result of the lack of women's leadership, and how we might be able to address those and how we can best support women leaders. We have here 2 people from organisations that the Freedom Fund currently works with in Nepal and in India, who will give their perspectives and experiences on women's leadership. The first is Hira Dahal, who's director and co-founder of Chori, a women-led NGO dedicated to ending gender discrimination and sexual exploitation in Nepal. And the second is Pradeep Narayanan from the Praxis Institute for Participatory Practices, who's a human rights researcher and activist who's worked extensively on issues of trafficking in India. I wanted to start by asking Hira to share her journey to becoming a leader and how her experience as a girl and then a woman in Nepal shaped that journey.
Thank you, Claire. Namaste to everyone. I'm Hira Dahal from Nepal. I represent an organization called Chori, which means daughter in Nepali. Chori visions a society free from any sorts of discrimination against girls and women in Nepal. Talking something about my journey in leadership, I would like to share some of my past experiences and my struggle against patriarchy. My birth as a daughter was not so much a welcoming moment to my family, and my mother suffered more because she was not able to give birth to a son. My education was not a priority to anyone, and I was sent to school while I was 11 years old. I was pretty good in my education, but there were still frequent interruptions to go to school regularly, as I had to support in domestic work at home, and sometimes there would be cultural interruptions like menstrual discrimination. I really feel sad to remember that I had to miss my 15 days of the schools while I had my first menstrual period, and I was taken to villager's house and had to stay there. I couldn't see my dad, my brothers, and couldn't be at home, and then it really felt me so much bad. Even like while I crossed my 15 years of age, my family started to talk about the wedding of mine, and I was very child, and I had seen that my mothers had a big responsibilities to fulfill at home as being a woman, being a wife. And also I had seen that my mother was beaten by my father frequently, even in a small kind of issues. So I had a fear that if I get married, I would have to suffer the same kind of life like my mom. So I didn't want to get married at that time. And I was able to reject the plan of my family with lots of struggles. And then after completion of my school education, I had only two choices, either to get married or to go for further education, because I'm from a village and where I couldn't get my further education, higher education in the village. But my passion of study was so much strong, and luckily I got a chance to go to city with my uncle and aunt, looking after their children and continue my education. So after completion of my higher education, I was able to continue my bachelor's degree on my own after starting to work as a teacher. So coming to the city, working as a teacher, starting in college gave me some understanding that, I had faced lots of gender-based discrimination in my life. So the seeds of leadership was planted on me from that time. And I also started to explore what are the real situation, overall issues of women and girls facing in Nepal. And luckily, I got a chance to work in an anti-trafficking organizations. So from 2002, since now, I am working on anti-slavery movement continuously. Giving birth to a daughter for a second time, I have two daughters, was another moment that taught me a lot about the situation of girls and women in Nepal, the gender-based discrimination because just being give birth to a daughter. It not only taught me a lot about the situation, but also an eye-opening to me to dedicate my life to support girls and women who are really in need and who are in exploitation and slavery in Nepal. And Chori is the result of my own experiences. Chori is a result of my own experiences to create a society where every daughters are treated equally, every daughters are respected, valued, and they are out of sexual exploitation and slavery. Chori was established in 2013. I'm the founder of the organization, and Chori has been supporting annually around 1,000 of girls and women to come out of slavery, to prevent from slavery, and to develop them as a leaders of the futures. We work with the girls and women who are in sexual exploitation and slavery in adult entertainment business, like the places like cabin restaurant, dance bar, and massage parlor. And we are doing this all amazing work because of the generous supports of the organizations like Freedom Fund. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hira. Thank you. I think everyone is obviously very much inspired and admiring of your dedication to overcoming the discrimination and gender bias that you experience personally, and using that as fuel to drive your leadership journey. I'm wondering, once you became the leader of your own organization, what challenges and what discrimination you have faced in carrying out your work.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, I have been working since 17 years. I have been doing lots of advocacy work, and we have to go to the government office to share that these kind of issues are there, and you have to have your program to policy to address the issues. And many of the times we feel that the issues that we raise are not heard, accepted, and acted properly. And they have the perception that these women cannot do anything, and we suffer from it. And the other thing is while we implement the program, we have to have frequent threat from the perpetrators. While we try to exit the girls from the slavery, either we support them in other kind of program, or while we file the cases. And in such situation also, we don't get enough support enough support for our protection and for the protection of the girls from the government. And beside that, we also have the challenges even at our home. Everyone like us, the women leaders, our family have a expectation that we should be as a traditional housewife, looking after whatever good work we do outside doesn't matter to them. We have to fulfill our role as a daughter-in-law, mother, housewife, and everything should be managed as my mother or other women are doing. So that's the challenges, and sometimes it makes us difficult to develop our professional capacity that we could develop, and it also hampers us to reach in the goal that we have set for.
Thank you very much, Hira. Turning now to Pradeep, I wonder, Pradeep, if you can speak a little bit about, based on the research that you've conducted for the Freedom Fund and also your experience, in the Indian context, what are the challenges? Hira's already reflected on some of them, but what are the challenges for women leaders, particularly taking into account some of those issues of intersectionality in the Indian context of caste and class, for example?
Okay, just today's morning, I'll thank you for inviting us, and that the morning discussion actually helped me, revisit some of these things with that stereotyping as a center of the focus. We work closely with a community called so-called criminal tribes. They were denotified communities. Due to the colonial laws, they were called as criminal tribes. So under the SDG framework, the leave no one behind is something which is very sacrament to the entire thing. So we thought we use a community which we perceive as somebody who faces a lot of intersectional inequalities. So one such group, I just wanted to trace their journey into the workspace and what they faced, in terms of challenges due to the stereotypes. So this is a community which has been called as criminal tribes, and they have been denotified, but still they continue to be the history sheets of the police administration. Then they are Dalits at the wrong side of the caste hierarchy. And because they are criminal tribes, and they are in the wrong side of the law as well. And then this particular community within that sub-community is a community which actually works into a traditional sex work. So they are in the wrong side of morality as well. And these girls, some few girls young persons whom we try to understand what challenges they are facing, what we understood was they are also afraid of these binaries. The binary of either you have to be in sex work or you should be away from sex work. But what they want is a scenario which is irrelevant to sex work, because they want to work and get into various spaces which is not actually stereotyped into either of these things. So in that scenario, when they get into the workspace, which is not necessarily the traditional occupation, and get into the various supply chains of the various things, and some of the things which they face is, one is the stereotype of women, being able to be given a lower wage is something which is very common for them, because they feel otherwise they are free and now they are working, so whatever they are going to get is a bonus, so therefore the low wage is something. Then the concept of soft bargaining, because they won't make hard bargain, so therefore a lot of other things which they are entitled to, they won't get. Then the third, some of them are put in hostels, and in hostels, unlike the men, they are expected to cook and they are expected to clean the premises and all. So therefore, that becomes a very common, you don't even have to work hard for that. It is actually given to them, and they also take it as something. And then the collective bargaining, because that is actually missing. So in a sense, they will be facing the stereotypes at every space when they move into the workspace, into the thing. And in that scenarios, this is in addition to this, they have the additional burden of all the other baggages, because they are from Dalit. They know that there is a political dominance will not be there, so they will not get the access to the lots of policy spaces. And coming from the sex work, even the civil societies often work in those binaries. So you cannot accept the fact that they can be sex worker and still access higher education. They can be those kinds of things are something which they will face in their regular slavery thing.
And so, given that context, what do you think that we, as part of the anti-slavery movement, are missing by not having women leaders, and what would increasing women leadership bring in terms of the improving the impact of anti-slavery actions?
Correct. I think something important was, I think the morning session, I think Dorothy, I think she mentioned about the fact that the leadership itself is shaped by different versions of patriarchy, right, at different places. So therefore often we try to identify, many of them are natural leaders in that sense, because they are coping with a lot of intersectional inequalities. So they are actually the natural leaders, but then we try to help them with a new concept of leadership with them. Sometimes even the leadership becomes a moral burden for them, right? Because they have created a coping system within this inequalities to actually live and engage with various scenarios and have a autonomous decision-making system, nearly autonomous for them, to make different calls. But often in this scenario, a leadership could actually bring them a much more burden, a moral burden on it, and that moral burden is also shaped by patriarchy. Right? So in that sense, it becomes a challenge in that scenario. So often we take them away from the society, their social space, and build their leadership. But when they go back to the social space which they are in, they again start facing the challenges. So therefore, it is the challenge for us is actually to help them with a space of leadership within their society, their workspaces, and that is going to be the bigger challenge for anti-slavery leadership movement into it and all. Because as we take them away from the space to help them build leadership, the worry is that leadership itself should not become a moral burden on them to be, to actually preach what they are, to actually act on what they are preaching. That becomes a bigger burden, because they might be preaching because they want it to happen. But action becomes much more of a challenge for them, because they're facing the realities of inequalities in their lives. Yeah.
And picking up what was said this morning about thinking about the context in which we're building women's leadership and what they're going back to once that capacity's been built. I'll open it up now to some questions from the audience. If anyone has questions for Hira or Pradeep? Not yet. Perhaps then oh, sorry, over here.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on that last point, because I find it actually quite fascinating. I think we're talking a lot about leadership, but there's so much embedded in that word, both from a gender perspective and a non-gender perspective. Leadership is, in some respects, not something given. It's something that's within you, and it can be nurtured in different kinds of ways. But I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about this idea of a burden of leadership as well, and what we can do both in, I guess, the context that you've seen, but maybe also in the corporate context to support women or any leader in that respect. And do women have particular burdens around the responsibilities that come with leadership?
Just one more question here.
Hi, I'm Becca from Acumen. My question's for Hira. With the amazing work you're doing at Chori, is there support you have from governments or corporates or just other sector players in the work you're providing or support you're providing for women who have gone through that kind of abuse at home, whether it's sexual abuse or just the discrimination, which is for many an everyday narrative? How are you getting others to participate? And two, how are you getting families to understand that that culture isn't right? So you said you realized only many years later when you went to college that what you went through in growing up was gender discrimination. But for many, that is a norm. And so they don't even know it's a form of discrimination. So two questions. One is who's supporting? And the second one is how are you disrupting that narrative within families for women to be even aware of what they're going through?
Thank you. Do you want?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the question. It's not that much like good support that we get from the government to work and to do some like implementing activities and make their participation is quite okay. They are okay to do to be in the coordination, but like getting support, especially the financial support, is quite challenging. But like after long term of our effort, we are able to get funding from government as well, like to run some information counseling center in the community, and they have a belief that Chori can do really good work. So that kind of information, that kind of like impression we are able to give them. And in the main city like Kathmandu, that's quite challenging to get the funding because like they have lots of other priority in the city. And it's still like currently, even in Kathmandu valley, we are able to get some funding from the government, and we are happy that that's a big achievement that we have got. And for the changes that what we can do in the situation is like even after I get married and started my life at my new home, like while I had my period, what my mother-in-law used to do was she was not allowed to go to my go to kitchen, so I couldn't go to the kitchen in the beginning, and slowly I started to challenge on her, like by saying that if you don't eat the food that I cook, it's okay, you can cook by yourself, but I will not follow the same thing that you asked me to follow. So that was quite challenging job I had to start from my home. And then we do lots of training, orientation to the girls in the school, and I really like share the same example that you can do, and there is possibility to change, and it inspires them that, and they feel that we haven't got this information from teacher, and you are coming here, you are teaching us, so we are ready to hear.
Thank you. This is for Hira. If you could tell us more about the relationship with the police. And then for Pradeep, what you said about people coming out of slavery wanting to be able to transition. This is very interesting because when they do the monitoring and evaluation of such initiatives, they want you to say, this woman has stopped being a sex worker completely. So how are you coping with that? Because I think that we've all seen that's the reality.
Do you want to start, Pradeep?
Yeah. I think I'll start with this one, the last one, which is very interesting because we work with a community where the source and destination is a big problem because they are into traditional sex work, so their source itself is vulnerable to sex industry. So therefore, often it is very difficult for us to put them into a binary because many of them, for them, sex work has been given to them. They are forced into the sex work. At the same time, their situations are such that they choose to be in the sex work. So therefore, at some point of time when we look at it, we try to find out go beyond the binary of sex work and thing and find out what is the access to other entitlements which they have, which opens them up to fight the modern slavery or fight the other aspects of the bondedness to it. So therefore, that is the route which is going to be a challenge route to make the sex work or the thing irrelevant to them, to their choices. at the same, so that it is an empowering thing for them. But again, it is more in a theoretical domain as we look at it. I would rather say it is more in a practical domain which could not be theorized yet, right? So the second part is actually what happens is the patriarchy is smart enough to create counter-patriarchy, counter-stereotypes within it, so that it retains the dissent space also with it. So therefore, you will create what is patriarchy also you will define, what is not patriarchy also patriarchy will define. So in that scenario is this binary which is going to be a challenge, because we have to go beyond that patriarchy framework to create certain new framework to define it. So that is where the challenge will be. And I think I'll stop it here. I don't remember the other things.
I would like to go first from her. Yeah, sometimes like I am in middle. It's sometimes helpful and sometimes it's not too. Like in terms of, I don't talk more about the theoretical initiatives, but I would like to talk about the implementation or the activities that we do. In such situation, like we have found, especially the organizations who supports us in two ways. The one way is to like the Western organizations, they have their program, they have their objective, they have their program, and they like select some organizations to implement the program that they have set for. And all other parties, like there are some other organizations who approach us and then see what we really need and what we can bring change in our community. And they are okay to support us on the basis of our need. So while we get the support and the even the ideas which are matching with us, which are on our contracts and which are supportive to us, in this kind of situation, it's more effective and it has helped us a lot to grow. And yeah, these are the two separate parts. And coming to her questions about the relationship with the police, it's structural level. Still we have many problems, like the government doesn't have that much like structure system to support the survivors, to stop the trafficking and modern day slavery. We have the policy, but like the implementation level, it's not fully implemented. And we work with the police to make them aware that we have the policy, they have to do this work, they have to do this work. But in this kind of situation, what happens is that the police, the groups that we work directly, they are okay to change and they are really doing good work as well. They are taking even initiatives to monitor the places, visit the places if there are any situation of trafficking happening or not, and they even rescue the girls and refer to us. But at the same time, to those police who are not that much like aware about the situation and who are not like learning about the situation of trafficking or the violence or any kind of slavery, they just like they are very straightforward and they are like their behavior is not also good, and all the time their perception is also very negative towards women, and instead of supporting the women they go as a customer. So it's varies.
I just wanted to respond to that Western thing and all. Western, I think I would say a lot of significant debates have changed in the South due to the Western intervention, especially through many organizations, through the development aid as well as through the thing, which is very positive. And I think that they could make a change. I would say thankfully, because of the fact that most of the knowledge which West has derived is also merely a certification of knowledge which happens in the West, which is largely of the South, right? Because the journals get published here, or the certification of knowledge and many things. So in that sense, it would be very rudimentary to look at it as a Western knowledge and the Southern knowledge. We have to look at it from which part of Western knowledge was able to change the now. So that's why in the South they differentiate as modernization and the and the westernization, somewhere the solution, I think the knowledge of answer to this question lies over there in terms of it. We can't call everything which is coming from the West as the West derived knowledge. It is probably because of the way the publishing industry is, like everything gets certified as the Northern knowledge, even if it is done most of the time in the South.
And just to pick up on that, I would say that from the Freedom Fund's perspective, that's why this program and other initiatives to build the capacity of those people who are most directly affected by slavery to be able to lead the movement is so important, because the structural issues and the kind of root drivers of exploitation and the ways to address them are best understood by those people who directly experience that, whether that be women, survivors, and so that's why we're really seeking to build the capacity of those people to be able to lead the movement and to arm them with the skills to be able to I mean, they already have skills, but to be able to engage on that level to really drive the movement in the direction where they see it needs to go. I think we are out of time. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Hira and Pradeep, for journeying so far to join us today.